Well, hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about something that, in my opinion, doesn't get enough attention, and that is hypopigmentation, or loss of pigment. I've got a lot of videos on this channel about hyperpigmentation, dark spots, sunspots, best ingredients for fading these things. What about when the skin heals with a loss of pigment? The skin's ability to make pigment can slow down as a result of a variety of different things. Any sort of skin injury, medications that you put on your skin, or if you've had a cosmetic procedure like Botox, fillers, resurfacing lasers. A lot of times though, hypopigmentation is secondary to a primary skin disorder that heals with loss of pigment. It's called post-inflammatory hypopigmentation. In people who have eczema, they'll often develop white patches on the face. It's called pityriasis alba. I have a whole video about this, but it's really common, especially in young children. Seborrheic dermatitis, basically the same thing that happens on your scalp, which is called dandruff. It can affect your face, seborrheic dermatitis. And in people who have skin of color, it often is accompanied by hypopigmentation. Psoriasis often is accompanied by hypopigmentation, or can resolve with loss of pigment. There was a lot of inflammation there, got in the way, interfered with the skin's ability to produce pigment in those areas. Then there is that pesky little fungal infection that a lot of people cope with, especially if you live in a tropical climate, tinea versicolor, also called pityriasis versicolor. I have a whole video on this skin condition, which I'll link down below in the description box. This is a condition where you get these little kind of brownish tan spots that later go on to heal with hypopigmentation. Sometimes they can be a little scaly. It tends to affect the central chest, the upper back. Really, it can affect any body site. It's more common in people who live in humid climates. When we're talking about loss of pigment in the skin, we cannot forget the autoimmune condition vitiligo. Basically, what happens with vitiligo is that your immune system decides, for whatever reason, it doesn't like the pigment producing cells and it attacks them. So those are some common reasons for hypopigmentation or loss of pigment, development of white or light patches. But you're probably clicking into this video because you want to know, how do I get rid of this? How do I get my skin to go back to its background normal color for me? Over the next few weeks, just pay attention to the area. Are the spots starting to darken? Are you developing new spots elsewhere? Are you seeing no change? These are all important things for helping to figure out what the next best steps are. Remember, a light spot can appear wherever you had a recent skin injury or skin inflammation. Say you had a rash, some sort of bug bite, that can heal with hypopigmentation. And once the rash, the main problem that led to the development of the hypopigmentation, once that goes away, it's gone, it's treated, it's controlled, it's no longer active, well, the good news is that hypopigmentation will slowly resolve and your skin will go back to its normal color. You don't need a separate treatment or anything of that sort. Your body is going to work to make more pigment once that inflammation and that primary skin issue has gone away or is at least controlled. How long does it take for your skin to go back to its normal color? That depends on how long you had the initial problem form, how severe it was. Say you had a rash that was just a couple of weeks. Good news, the hypopigmentation, it's not going to take as long to resolve. Maybe you'll start to see the pigment coming back within a few weeks. However, if it's a skin problem that has been brewing and active for a long time, it's going to take more time for that pigment to come back. And in some cases, it might not come back. Primary skin conditions that often heal with hypopigmentation include eczema or seborrheic dermatitis on the face. With eczema, like I said, pityriasis alba, those little white patches. Good news is, with moisturizing and controlling the eczema on the face, those white patches, they will go back to the normal skin color. Same thing with seborrheic dermatitis. It can lead to hypopigmentation, especially in skin of color. And once you start treating and controlling the seborrheic dermatitis with things like anti-dandruff shampoos and, where necessary, topical anti-inflammatory treatments, well, then that pigment goes back to your normal color. But what happens if you notice that you are developing new white or light spots, or that the white or light spots you have are getting worse, spreading out. In these cases, see a board-certified dermatologist for evaluation for a potential underlying skin disorder. The sooner treatment is started, the better the likelihood you have of getting your skin color to go back to baseline normal color for you, including with vitiligo. When vitiligo is in the early stages and it's actively spreading, that is actually the best time to intervene to get the best response. And your dermatologist can make the diagnosis from physical exam. We look at the skin under a special lamp called a Woods light that helps highlight the areas where the pigment is starting to go down. In some cases, an anti-inflammatory medication can be given right away to at least put the brakes on further spreading to help keep things under control. Likewise, if you see no change, the spots stay exactly as they are, see a board-certified dermatologist for evaluation. There are a lot of rare skin disorders that can present with hypopigmentation, discoloration, and loss of pigment. You want to make sure that you are on the right path so as to not develop worsening of that. Before going in to see a dermatologist, think really hard about anything that you have put on the skin. Certain things that you come in contact with actually can lead to loss of pigment in the skin. Whatever you do, don't try and self-treat the loss of pigment. This can end up making things worse, can cause more irritation, more inflammation, and truthfully, there is nothing in the store that you can buy to put on the skin that's going to bring the pigment back. There's no universal one right treatment for this. Again, it's going to depend on the underlying cause. In the case of eczema, for example, you may find that the hypopigmentation clears up so long as the eczema, of course, is under control, and that you benefit from using moisturizers in that area to improve the health of the moisture barrier, reduce water loss, ultimately reducing irritation and inflammation. In the case of seborrheic dermatitis, you may be advised by your dermatologist to use over-the-counter remedies like anti-dandruff shampoos. That might help. You can see how getting to the root cause is key, and knowing what the root cause is key. What about going out and trying to tan the spots? Should you do that? No. When the skin is actively trying to produce more pigment, sun exposure actually can be too much and you can end up healing with hyperpigmentation. So I do suggest continuing to protect your skin from the sun using a broad spectrum sunscreen, sun protective clothing, not sunbathing. In the case of vitiligo, because it is an autoimmune disease, one treatment for vitiligo that ends up working out quite well is actually phototherapy with UV. We use a very specific controlled dose, but basically what it does is it suppresses that autoimmune attack. And so for those folks, they may observe that their vitiligo improves when they are getting some sun exposure, when they are on a sunny vacation. But rather than expose yourself to UV rays from the sun, which are too strong and can end up damaging your skin and or contributing to hyperpigmentation, phototherapy is a much safer way to derive those benefits. In the case of vitiligo, sun exposure, you may notice, improves it. And one of the interesting things about vitiligo is that when it starts to improve, you will notice that the pigment comes back around the hair follicles first. So it comes back and they're like little spots of pigment throughout it. So that is a good sign. It means that the color is starting to come back. And the reason that it comes out around the follicles first, around the hair follicles, is well, that's where the reservoir of new pigment stem cells resides. And so they come out to populate the area, and they come out first around the hair follicle. All that to say, don't try and self-treat these things. See a board-certified dermatologist if things are not improving. In many cases, there's a good chance you don't need any treatment. Like say you got a bug bite, it went away, it's healed up, but it left a white spot behind. Chances are there's a good chance that that's going to spontaneously go back to your normal pigment in a few weeks. That's not a permanent thing. That's not a chronic ongoing issue, that bug bite. So there's no need, you don't necessarily need a specific treatment, and going out of your way to find one, it's not going to do much. So that's a little overview of hypopigmentation. It's something that doesn't receive enough attention, I think, because there are so many potential reasons to have hypopigmentation or loss of pigment. And there's not really anything that can be sold in the store that addresses hypopigmentation. There's not a cream or a lotion specifically that restores pigment in the skin. Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation and hypopigmentation, you can have both of them occurring at the same time. We'll just lump them together as dyspigmentation. These are both issues that predominantly affect people who have skin of color, deeper skin tones. Sometimes patients are not even that concerned about, say, a pimple. What they're more concerned about is the residual dyspigmentation, whether it be hyper or hypo. Both issues can and do occur. They can occur in all skin types, but they're obviously more common in skin of color and more easily triggered in skin of color because of the nature of the pigment cells and the pigment packets, if you will, in deeper skin tones, more prone to these issues, and they can be more stubborn and more long lasting and really be distressing for those patients. It's definitely something that needs more attention. We give a lot of attention to the hyperpigmentation, but we can't neglect or forget about the fact that a lot of people also heal with hypopigmentation, and both things are equally distressing and both are equally important to address in caring for patients. These are also super important things to address, especially in skin of color, if you are seeking out cosmetic procedures, because laser treatments, for example, the settings are not universal to all skin tones, and it's really an issue if the wrong laser settings are used on a patient who has skin of color. It's going to put them at risk for dyspigmentation. So if you do have a deeper skin tone and you are interested in aesthetic procedures, make sure you go to a board certified dermatologist. A lot of issues can arise from going to like med spas where people may not necessarily be adequately trained. I hope this video was informative to you. On the end slide, I'm going to put my video on idiopathic guttate hypomelanosis. It's basically white spots common on like the lower legs or the arms. Check that out if you think that's something you may be coping with. I go all into the details about that and treatments, etc. But if you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.